Welcome, weary traveler, to a space where silence speaks and ancient stones whisper tales of forgotten truths. You find yourself walking through the serene ruins of a forgotten cathedral, a place that never bore a name. Its skeletal arches stretch towards a sky that seems to have turned away, while its ancient foundation is slowly consumed by the relentless embrace of roots and an ocean of profound silence. Ivy, like a verdant serpent, devours the remnants of its once precise geometry, and the wind whispers mournfully through corridors that were never consecrated. In the very heart of this desolation lies a solitary stone slab, strangely untouched by the creeping moss or the decay of time, bearing only a single stark word: nihil. This place remains unvisited. No pilgrims seek solace here, no priests offer prayers. Only dust settles and echoes of memory linger. Yet once this very ground pulsed with an unyielding ambition, resounding with the determined footsteps of a man who dared to believe he could construct eternity with mere mortar and mathematics. This ambitious soul was Lazzaro di Spenta, a man born into obscurity, marked by the fiery circumstances of his mother's death during his birth. His father, a humble stonemason from Siena, instilled in him the disciplined creed of measure twice, cut once, and the vital lesson of never fearing voids, only miscalculations. Yet Lazarus would come to fear nothing more, and paradoxically nothing less, than the void itself. He would learn to love it, to worship it, to meticulously shape the entirety of his soul around its profound emptiness. Whispers followed him, suggesting he was touched, some said by angels, others by madness, all agreed by an undeniable brilliance. By the age of 23, he had already conceived theoretical blueprints for a city utterly devoid of walls, a cathedral reaching endlessly skyward without a ceiling, and a chapel stripped bare of any altar. At 30, his extraordinary reputation reached the highest echelons, and he found himself summoned by the Pope himself. The Vatican yearned for something profoundly new, something truly unforgettable, and they had heard of the young man who could conjure buildings into existence as pure paradox. The extraordinary commission arrived cloaked in silence, accompanied only by a significant ring. Lazzaro was tasked with constructing the Sanctum Mundi, the sanctuary of the world. It was to be neither a conventional church, nor a grand palace, nor an impenetrable fortress, but something entirely unprecedented, a structure that had simply never existed before. When the Pope was questioned about what this unique creation was intended to house, he replied with profound solemnity, "It must house the thing we dare not name." Lazzaro, with a deep understanding, simply nodded. He commenced his work with a square, for always the square, with its 4 perfect points and equal lines, represented the geometry of man. Yet the square felt inherently wrong, and he swiftly discarded it. He then began anew with the circle, for the circle, having no beginning and no end, embodied the divine made visible. He drew one, then another,
and then hundreds more circles nested within squares, squares embraced by circles, and intricate spirals formed from ratios so profoundly obscure they seemed to defy all conventional notation. By the third week of this intense design period, he ceased to eat. By the sixth, sleep became a forgotten luxury. His bewildered apprentices would often discover him kneeling on the cool marble floor of his studio, murmuring intently to his sketches as if they were engaged in a secret, reciprocal conversation. Once, with eyes ablaze with a startling clarity, he declared, "The building must not contain God. It must confess that he is absent."
The cornerstone for this enigmatic structure was laid on the feast of Saint Cassian, the revered patron of unrecognized martyrs. Lazaro, however, adamantly insisted on no grand ceremony, no traditional blessing. Instead, with a quiet intensity, he placed a single, peculiar object beneath the stone, a mirror, meticulously wrapped in black silk. When questioned about this unusual act, he offered only a cryptic explanation. So the first thing this place remembers is the thing it will never reflect. Construction commenced with a workforce of 20 masons and 300 laborers, yet astonishingly without any discernible plan. Lazaro steadfastly refused to provide blueprints, issuing his perplexing instructions only in riddles. "The arch must weep, not rise," he would command, or "this corridor must echo with something no one has said yet," or even "the dome must cast a shadow that touches nothing." Initially, the workers grumbled and complained, but soon their protests ceased. Then, eerily, their conversations dwindled to silence. They spoke of an unsettling quality about the place, the way its forms curved unexpectedly, or how the wind seemed to move with an unnatural intelligence through the scaffolding. It stirred within them dreams of forgotten knowledge, of things they didn't remember ever knowing. The city began to buzz with hushed rumors, some speculating that Lazaro had succumbed to madness, while others whispered that he had glimpsed a truth too monumental for words, too delicate for the grasp of sanity. 3 years into the construction, the Pope himself paid a visit, stepping into the unfinished narthex, where he stood in profound silence for a full hour. When he finally departed, his hands visibly trembled, and the very next day he revoked his commission entirely. Yet Lazaro remained undeterred. He systematically sold everything he possessed, his cherished home, his family inheritance, even his father's treasured chisel, sacrificing all to continue his monumental endeavor. Apprentices, disheartened, departed, and builders, increasingly unnerved, fled. Still a stubborn few remained, bound not by loyalty, but by a shared, growing obsession. "What are we building?" one of them dared to ask on a tumultuous night, as lightning fractured the sky over the marble skeleton and the wind scattered tools like forgotten bones. Lazaro, his gaze fixed on the raging storm, replied with chilling conviction, "We are building the impossibility of permanence." The first catastrophic collapse occurred in the 5th year. The north transept, constructed without a keystone at Lazaro's explicit instruction, buckled under the relentless assault of rain and time, shattering like fragile porcelain. 4 lives were lost, yet no funeral was held. Lazaro stood amidst the fresh rubble, a lone figure, and whispered,
It was never meant to stand.
Undeterred by the collapse, Lazaro began to build downwards, delving deep beneath the earth. He created rooms that no one dared to enter, and halls that spiraled endlessly downward, devoid of any torchlight. One particular passage was so long and tortuous that it took a man 3 agonizing days to crawl through its entire length. When he finally emerged, he was weeping uncontrollably, muttering incoherently about angels made of ash and a staircase that descends into itself. After this, no one else was permitted to enter these subterranean depths. Whispers about the structure intensified. Some now condemned it as a profound heresy, while others proclaimed it a dark prophecy. By the 10th year, the building had fully taken its final, unsettling shape, vast, breathtaking, and profoundly wrong. It possessed no grand facade, its entrance merely a disquieting crack in the ground. There was no cross, no altar, no pews, and no doors. At its very heart lay a chamber completely open to the sky, exposed to the stars, and seemingly open to something else entirely. Distinguished visitors arrived, architects from France, bishops from Bohemia, philosophers from Cairo, all leaving pale and shaken, whispering of a cathedral that seemed to deny the very concept of cathedrals. A theologian, attempting to publicly condemn it in a sermon, shockingly set fire to his own study 2 weeks later, then ran naked through the streets, screaming, "He has shown us the unmaking." Lazaro, meanwhile, ceased eating once more, his beard growing wild and untamed. He spoke less and less, yet when he did, his voice possessed an unearthly calm. "I have found the geometry of loss," he would declare. "I have seen the blueprints of endings. I am not building to be remembered. I am building to erase."
The ultimate addition to this unsettling edifice was the chilling room of silence. A perfect cube, utterly devoid of windows, candlelight, or any echo. Within its confines there was nothing. No paintings, no inscriptions, no furniture, not even a discernible floor, only the disorienting sensation of perpetually falling, even when standing perfectly still. Lazaro once endured its oppressive emptiness for a harrowing 47 hours, emerging with his hair entirely transformed to stark white. By the 13th year of its existence, visitors ceased to come. The Vatican issued an official ban, and the city, in its collective memory, simply forgot. The building remained, a half-born, half-abandoned entity, as growths began to sprout defiantly from its cracks, and vines crept insidiously over its blind stone surfaces. Lazaro, however, stayed, utterly alone. Each day he would meticulously circle the dome, and each night he would descend into the spiraling depths below. No one ever truly knew what he witnessed in those solitary moments. Then, one day, he simply vanished. What remained was not merely a ruin, nor a conventional monument, but a profound, cathedral-shaped question. And the wind, an eternal presence, continued to move through it like breath through lungs that had never uttered a sound. His final words were eventually discovered, scratched onto a beam, upside down, requiring one to hang precariously from the rafters to decipher them. "We build not to last, but to learn what cannot be built."
Years unfurled, and the world in its ceaseless turning forgot the enigmatic structure. Maps were redrawn, wars reshaped borders, and empires rose and fell, one giving way to another. Yet the building remained, not preserved, but simply there. Children, in their innocent daring, would challenge each other to approach its unsettling presence. Poets, drawn by its mystery, composed sonnets about the profound absence they felt near its walls. Travelers, compelled to capture its form, made sketches, only to tear them up afterward, for something about it unsettled the hand, as if merely recreating its lines might awaken a truth best left dormant. No one dared to touch it until one man did, Father Matteo, a Dominican inquisitor whose purpose was not to question, but to silence those who dared. He arrived not with wonder, but with a deep-seated suspicion. The Church, in its vigilant oversight, had begun compiling lists of residual heresies, and Lazzaro's creation bore a red seal with a stark declaration: "The structure defies interpretation." This alone was sufficient to summon Matteo. He came equipped with torchlight and ink, rope and scripture, entering the ominous edifice at dusk with 5 accompanying men. At dawn, he emerged utterly alone, his eyes bloodshot, having seemingly aged 10 years in a mere 10 hours. For weeks he refused to utter a single word. When he finally did, he wrote, rather than preached, a solitary document. It was later discovered hidden within the margins of his missal, scribbled frantically between the psalms. "It is not empty," he penned. "It is waiting." In a desperate attempt to eradicate its influence, the Church set the building ablaze from 3 sides. The flames hissed, and the marble seemed to sing, yet the fire, astonishingly, would not catch. Stone, by its nature, does not burn, but more profoundly, the structure refused to even crack. The internal wood turned to ash, the roof melted, but the skeletal bones of the place remained steadfast, as if the inferno itself were merely a fleeting guest.
Then came Sebastienne, the renowned painter, a woman cloaked in black, celebrated for her portraits of saints that appeared too human and martyrs who seemed too serene. She learned of the enigmatic place not through common rumor, but through a vivid, compelling dream. In this dream, she walked blindfolded through a space that seemed to speak in pure geometry. The very next morning, she committed this vision to canvas, a cathedral with no discernible door, only a single unsettling eye. Her patrons, horrified, denounced it as grotesque, and her confessor, deeply disturbed, advised her to fast. Driven by an irresistible urge, she went searching, finding the cathedral either by sheer accident or by an inescapable inevitability. Sebastian remained within its strange embrace for 7 days, painting nothing. On the 8th day, she emerged, making a startling declaration. "There is a face at the center of the void, and it is mine." From that day forward, she never painted again. What, then, was this place? Was it a question, a weapon, or perhaps a confession? Some speculated it was a temple to atheism, cunningly constructed within the very syntax of religion. Others christened it the Cathedral of Collapse, a space designed not to elevate God, but to meticulously deconstruct all that humanity termed divine. Yet one forgotten philosopher, Clovis d'Ambert, proposed a radically different theory. He argued passionately that Lazzaro had not failed in his monumental undertaking. He succeeded, Clovis wrote, in an age of cathedrals meticulously designed to contain. He built one that expels.
a structure so profoundly honest it dares to reflect only absence. He pressed his argument further. All sacred space is inherently a lie. It offers illusory shelter from the terrifying expanse of cosmic silence. Lazaro built no such lie. He constructed a mirror vast enough for God himself to disappear inside. For these radical assertions, Clovis was excommunicated, and his essay was swiftly banned. Nevertheless, it clandestinely circulated for decades, copied by flickering candlelight, concealed within hymnals, and whispered in the hollowed halls of universities.
Then a profound silence descended, stretching across decades as centuries slowly turned their pages. Wars erupted again, nations crumbled, and machines ascended, as aeroplanes rained fire and satellites meticulously mapped every inch of the world. Yet no satellite could ever truly capture the complete form of Lazaro's enigmatic creation. Photographs invariably emerged blurred, coordinates inexplicably shifted, and surveyors consistently lost their signals. One team from Berlin adamantly claimed to find only dense forest where the structure was supposed to stand, while another from Kyoto returned convinced they had traversed its corridors in a dream, though none could recall how. This profound mystery persisted until the final visitor arrived. His name was Nathan Ilyich, a theoretical architect born into an era where buildings no longer aspired to reach the heavens, but merely to maximize profits. He designed sprawling shopping malls shaped like iPhones and towering glass structures modeled after wine bottles. Yet by night he secretly sketched other things. Structures that spiraled endlessly inward, homes designed to decay with the passage of time, places conceived not to house physical bodies, but abstract thoughts. He stumbled upon a footnote about Lazaro in a fringe philosophy journal, which described the Sanctum Mundi as the world's most sincere cathedral. That single phrase, profound and unsettling, poisoned him. He ceased taking clients, stopped conversing with friends, sold all his possessions, purchased a ticket to Italy, and commenced his arduous search. It took him 3 years to find it, shrouded in thick fog on the remote edge of a forgotten province, guarded by nothing but thorny thickets and the relentless march of time. It appeared to be asleep, yet awake in the way ancient stones seem to remember. He entered its silent embrace, carrying only a notebook, and he never emerged. We only know what transpired next through the legacy of his remaining journal. Ilnich's meticulously kept journal was discovered on the 34th day following his disappearance, found precisely at the center of the daunting room of silence, an improbable location unless one entered blindfolded, which, inexplicably, a rescue team eventually did. The journal itself comprised 93 pages, though much of it was rendered unreadable, filled with frantic scratches, indecipherable diagrams and equations in invented numerals. Yet certain haunting passages remained, allowing his voice to echo through time. On day 2, he wrote, "I thought it would be dust and ruin. It is more intact than anything I have ever seen. Not structurally, no, but in intent. Every inch breathes coherence, every corner whispers purpose, but a purpose I can't name, not yet." By day 5, he recounted, "I stayed in the chamber with the spiral. It's not architectural, it's psychological.
a room that becomes narrower, not in shape, but in mind. My thoughts couldn't finish themselves. Sentences began and curled inward. I left with half a scream in my lungs. On day 9, a chilling realization. This is no ruin. It is an idea wearing marble skin. I am beginning to suspect the idea is not human. Day 13. There is no center. I've tried mapping it. The building folds. Rooms vanish and reappear. I walked east for an hour and arrived at the western vestibule. There are no windows, but the light changes. Sometimes I feel it coming from below. His entry for day 15 was profoundly disturbing. I slept in the room of silence, dreamed of a man carving equations into bones. I woke with a tooth in my hand that was not mine. I buried it. By day 21, a shift occurred. I have stopped drawing. I no longer feel worthy to replicate. The building is not beautiful. It is truthful. On day 28, he made a startling discovery. I found the mirror Lazaro buried, still intact, still wrapped. But when I touched it, I saw a version of myself that it never built anything. He looked relieved. His final and profound entries came on day 33. I now believe the structure is alive. Not metaphorically, it responds, it resists, it teaches. But the lesson is subtraction. And on day 34, I do not wish to return, not because I am afraid, but because out there buildings lie. They promise safety, meaning, time. This place promises nothing. And finally, I can breathe. His postscript, a final, chilling instruction. If you find this, burn it, then enter and listen, not to me, to the emptiness. It will tell you what you are. The journal abruptly ends, and no body was ever recovered. Only the book itself, and a newly formed crack in the marble floor, precisely wide enough for one man.
Today the sanctum mundi persists, unclaimed, neither guarded nor explicitly closed, simply unapproached. It defies mapping, and no GPS system dares to name its location. Yet those who have ventured near recognize its enduring presence, feeling it as a pressure in the chest, a silence that leans closer, a shape that resists all photography, even before it is seen. It is not merely a building. It is an unbuilding, a cathedral constructed not to contain anything, but rather to systematically dismantle all that hides within us, the pervasive fear of meaninglessness, the deceptive comfort of symbols, and the fragile illusions of permanence. It embodies Lazaro's profound truth, and perhaps your own. It waits. The structure began to draw not conventional pilgrims, but those who had lost their way, those without pilgrimage, not seekers of answers, but those utterly exhausted by questions, not the faithful, but the failed. An old woman, her spirit broken by the loss of all her children to war, came and sat at its edge for 3 days. On the 4th, she walked barefooting to the structure, dragging a mournful string of bones behind her, and was never seen again. A mathematician from Prague who had been blinded during a solar eclipse arrived with a chalkboard strapped to his back, claiming he had dreamed the unprovable and intended to offer it as a sacrifice. He entered whispering, "Let the structure confirm what no mind dares to believe." His chalkboard was later found within the room of silence, every inch filled, every inch repeating the same chilling Latin phrase, nulla forma, nihil lux, no form, no light. Time itself began to behave strangely around the cathedral.
Seasons shifted with an unnatural cadence, rain echoed oddly, and shadows bent not in defiance of the sun, but as if attuned to a different gravity. Children born in the surrounding villages often remained mute for their first 5 years of life, and when they finally spoke, they uttered truths their parents feared. There is a mouth beneath the floor. The building breathes when no one is inside. He is not gone. He is learning. The church, or what remained of its influence, dispatched observers once more, but this time they brought not inquisitives, but theologians and therapists, scientists and monks. They did not enter the structure, instead setting up tents outside. One by one, each person from physicist to friar approached the entrance alone at night, and not a single one ever wrote a report. Within the cathedral continued its dignified decay, or perhaps its evolution. Cracks in the dome revealed new mosaics beneath, mosaic no one remembered placing. Marble peeled away like ancient parchment, exposing runes older than the very floor itself. Whispers of movement were reported, not mice, not wind, but something larger, intentional, and never when watched. Yet the structure did not rot. Instead, it seemed to reform on its own mysterious turns. A door would appear and then vanish, a corridor would inexplicably lengthen, and the room of silence gained a second echo, one that strangely did not match the chamber's physical shape. It was no longer merely a space. It had become a mind.
A profound new theory emerged, suggesting that the structure had never existed physically at all, but was, in essence, a flawless psychological architecture. It proposed that Lazaro had not constructed walls, but rather had carved a deep wound in the very fabric of belief itself, a wound that bled architecture. This cathedral, the theory posited, had always functioned as a mirror, reflecting history, divinity, and the inherent limitations of human comprehension. And when a sufficient number of souls had gazed into its depths, it simply blinked. Yet there remains one final hidden layer to this story, a truth concealed even from those who dared to enter the enigmatic room of silence. For Lazaro did indeed leave one ultimate inscription, not etched in marble, nor recorded in journals, but hidden beneath the very center of the building, beneath the mirror, in that elusive place where geometry fractured and time grew thin. It was carved in reverse, so that it could only be read when the morning light, passing through the fractured dome at a precise angle, cast its shadow upon the far wall. Only one man ever documented this inscription. He translated it, then meticulously destroyed his notes and vanished without a trace. His translated words read, "You have entered the only sacred space that cannot lie to you, not because it holds truth, but because it holds nothing. And in that nothing, you are finally free to see." Some interpreted this as a dire warning, others as a profound blessing. Still others believed it to be Lazaro's final confession, that after a lifetime spent pursuing the divine through intricate angles, profound silence, and deep shadow, he had arrived at this singular revelation. The absence of God is not the termination of faith, but rather the true genesis of honesty.
The world surrounding the Sanctum Mundi continued its inexorable march forward, oblivious and indifferent. Empires rose and fell, technology consumed forests and mountains, and the sky became a vast expanse of iron birds and intricate wire webs of light. Yet the cathedral endured, or rather simply was, a paradox remaining unchanged amidst constant flux.
At the very heart of this profound contradiction lay the greatest question Lazaro ever posed. What does it truly mean to build when everything constructed will inevitably crumble? This question resonated far beyond the confines of stone and mortar, taking root in minds, in hearts, and in the invisible architecture of both belief and doubt. Lazaro's cathedral functioned as a mirror, but more profoundly, it was a wound in the very soul of humanity's desperate need for permanence. Somewhere between the relentless rising and falling of stones, this question began to echo through countless lives, like the soft, distant tolling of a bell beneath a mountain. What if the meaning we relentlessly seek is not found in a building, a god, or a lasting legacy, but in the sheer courage to confront the nothingness that lies behind them? Across centuries, artists and thinkers, in their quiet contemplations, returned to the cathedral in their imaginations. A composer envisioned a symphony meticulously constructed on silence, its rests possessing the power equal to its notes. A poet crafted verses that skillfully unraveled language itself, revealing the profound spaces between words. A physicist pondered the intricate voids that structured matter and light, subtly hinting at cosmic absences that inherently shape existence. Each time they invariably returned to the same unspoken truth Lazaro had so profoundly built into stone. Creation is intrinsically an act of both presence and absence. In the modern era, amidst towering skyscrapers and ceaseless data streams, the Sanctum Mundi transformed into a powerful metaphor, a legend whispered in the hallowed halls of architecture schools and philosophy seminars.
It served as a stark reminder that every construction, be it of buildings, identities, or cherished beliefs, is perpetually haunted by the inescapable inevitability of decay and dissolution. Yet within this haunting lies a profound freedom, the freedom to build without the illusion of permanence, to love without the burden of possession, and to live without the desperate clinging need for immortality. In this spirit, some contemporary architects began to consciously embrace negative space, designing not merely with solid forms, but with intentional voids and gaps that invite profound reflection rather than mere distraction. This became a movement deeply inspired by Lazaro's radical honesty, a revolutionary way of unbuilding the inherent arrogance of permanence. But Lazaro's true legacy is neither ruin nor revival. It is an open question, an enduring invitation to all who dare to ask, what do you truly build when all buildings are temporary? How do you find faith when gods remain silent? Can profound meaning truly emerge from emptiness without immediate collapse? And what do you ultimately become when you finally confront the architect of nothingness within your own self? Perhaps in the final analysis, Lazaro was not mad, nor a heretic, nor a failure. Instead, he was the very first to whisper the profound truth that the world is not a fortress to be desperately held against the void, but rather a fragile bridge to be courageously crossed with eyes
wide open. And as you gently close your eyes now, standing before the ethereal shadow of the Sanctum Mundi, whether it exists in stone, in dream, or in memory, you may feel the faintest, most profound breath of something truly significant. Not a god, not a ghost, but a quiet, liberating freedom. The freedom of the void, the courage to begin anew. The architect of nothingness concludes not with answers, but with a profound silence. A silence that gently invites you to construct your own meaning, knowing full well that it may one day disappear, but building nonetheless, because in the echo of nothing, everything truly begins.
As you drift deeper into slumber, may the quiet freedom of the void bring you profound peace and a restful night.